E. coli bacteria may be unknowingly infecting others. More than 150 people have become ill after eating tainted hamburger meat at Jack in the Box restaurants in Idaho and Washington State. One child has died. Steve Williams reports.
More and more cases continue to come into the Seattle King County Health Lab, which recorded its first big increase in E. coli 0157 cases back in December, weeks before the Jack in the Box epidemic was first discovered. 30 more suspected hospital samples arrived for confirmation in January. So far, these people have tested 74 cases, 66 of which were confirmed. That's 6 times the number expected in the entire state in a full year.
You started recording from 1992 and 1993. See, there was an E. coli outbreak in the Seattle, Washington area. And Jack in the Box came out front and said, our suppliers just gave us bad meat. There's an attorney by the name of Bill Marler, who's going to be on the podcast here, talk to you about how he sued Jack in the Box successfully and took them on when there were really no one else holding them accountable, and how he continued to do that and became not only the civil trial attorney representing many people who have suffered from E. coli outbreaks, listeria outbreaks, but has now become an advocate in front of Congress. So after I watched the documentary, Poisoned, The Dirty Truth About Your Food, I had to go and get this guy on the podcast and also listen to his congressional hearing and take a look.
Cases tied to ground beef had gone down by 42%. I told them that they should emulate what the beef industry did, that the beef industry had worked hard to put me out of business. And the reason I can say that is because during that 2003 to early 2007, I had no ambulances to chase because I simply had no E. coli victims tied to E. coli, not tied to hamburger. And then the spring of 2007 started with an ominous uptick in E. coli recalls and illnesses, and ended with hundreds sickened, 33 million pounds of meat recalled. And guess what? More sick and dead children, and guess what? More lawsuits. China banned the import of U.S. beef. And if you ask the USDA and industry to explain this uptick, they have none. It's unacceptable.
So the question to me was, how did an attorney who is 4 years out of law school take on one of the biggest companies in the world? I mean, everybody knows about the $1 for 2 tacos at Jack in the Box, and then go on to have an entire industry fear him, not only because he's able to locate where these outbreaks are, but he's able to hold them accountable with the only thing that companies could really be accountable for: money. We're going to talk to Bill Marler today. He's going to talk about not only how he is the front runner for, honestly, outdoing the government in finding out outbreaks and holding these companies accountable for certain food and safety mishandlings, and a little bit about his background and what he's doing today, and how he's started as a trial attorney, but he is now really transcended to him being the advocate, not only in front of Congress, but across, really anywhere for the public. If you haven't seen the Netflix documentary, absolutely recommend it. Just heads up, you're not going to want to eat anything for a little bit of time. And when you do go grocery shopping, it may change how you grocery shop. First of all, thank you so much for coming on.
No.
It's, I'll tell you, me and my wife watched Poisoned.
Yeah. And now you're not eating for a week. So you're hungry.
So no joke. We watched it. I think we watched it on a Sunday morning, and we go grocery shopping on Sunday like most people do. And we did not buy any of the packaged leafy greens like we do. I all of a sudden started asking for all of my, and I'm a big steak guy, as many Texans are, but I started asking for my steaks like medium, even medium well sometimes, and I'm a medium rare guy. I'd be rare if it's possible, but not that anymore.
I mean, with that, steaks that are like a good steakhouse where, it's a, full cut of meat that they haven't like needle tenderized. Like, if there's a difference between a steak at, Ruth Chris and a steak at an Applebee's, because the Applebee's steak, or flank steak, they've run them through needle tenderizers, and that's no different than a hamburger. But a steak at Ruth Chris, you could do a medium, no issue, because the E. coli doesn't get into the interior of the meat. It's when you needle tenderize it or you turn it into hamburger and you grind it all up. It's because the E. coli can be in the interior, and if you don't get it to 155, you got a problem. But as long as you got a good steak, you can, sear the outside, cook it a bit inside, but you don't have to eat a burnt steak, put it that way, So
well, I'll tell you. So my wife loves burnt steak. So she was like, "I told you all these years."
I do too, but it's like I just shut my door. Yeah, no, I do too, but that's the way it goes. But it's an occupational hazard. So, although it's a hell of a lot, as I said in the movie, it's a hell of a lot safer than it was 30 years ago. Yeah. So, yeah.
No, I mean it is. That's not why I didn't come here to talk to you about that. I think you did a great job of the movie, and for the viewers, I definitely think anyone should watch this movie. It's a fantastic movie. I actually asked you to come on for a totally different angle.
Sure.
You are a trial attorney, and for lack of a better term, I'm a personal injury attorney in Houston, and there was something you did in a congressional hearing that I loved, and I think the quote, and I know you'll tell me if I'm wrong, but the quote was, "I have no more ambulances to chase in this one issue." And I don't know why, because I looked you up after watching the documentary, and I was like, man, he's got the right point, right? So as long as we as attorneys hold people accountable, companies accountable, people accountable for their actions, it creates a better good. And can you speak to a little bit about not only that congressional hearing, but that context? Because that was like, thank you, someone.
Yeah,
someone likes us.
Yeah. So it's kind of complex, and especially in the food safety space. I think it's a little different in other sort of products cases where, there's the Pinto that blows up, or a truck that goes, from, park to reverse and run somebody over. Right. They're clearly the consumer, the business, and the governmental entities can see exactly what happened, and there's no question about it. And so I think the civil law, works incredibly well when it's like a discrete, particular product problem that consumers, industry, and government can see happening. And I think that's where we as trial lawyers really effectuate change. And it's the lawsuits that we bring that hold corporations accountable that change their behavior, especially ones that during the course of discovery, you find that they knew about it all along, and it was going to cost $100, so they just blew it off. It's different with food. And even though food is a product, and product liability law still applies, about 85% of all foodborne illnesses are never attributable to a particular food item. So, you have this huge chunk of people, 48 million Americans, getting sick every year from food, but the system just doesn't pick up all of them because, I'll give you an example. There's a listeria outbreak going on here in the state of Washington. 6 people sick, 3 people died. The incubation period for listeria is 3 to 70 days. So between ingestion and onset of illness can be 3 days or up to 70 days.
What did you eat 3 days ago?
Couldn't tell you.
What did you eat 70 days ago? So the problem with these food cases is that, yes, there's these discrete outbreaks that you hear about, the Jack in the Box and the Odwalla or whatever happening right now. But most times, 90% of the phone calls I get, somebody's going like, I got sick, and the problem is that can you link it to anything in particular? So my point is why food is different than like an automobile that blows up is that the consumer sometimes never knows what it is that made them sick. So they can't really hire a lawyer to get compensated or to change a company's behavior. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what I have done during the course of my career is I've done what I can as it relates to litigating, and I've tried lots of these cases and done lots of discovery and done the stuff that we all love to do. But I also realized that because I was only able to do a very small slice of it to hold people accountable, I had to do something broader. And that's where I kind of crossed over from being a trial lawyer, taking care of my clients, to being an advocate for better food safety, legislation, regulation, and company accountability on a moral basis. And so therefore, that's why, in 2002, I wrote an op-ed, if you hate trial lawyers, clean up the meat supply and put me out of business. And that became something that the meat companies would wind up talking about at their conferences. Let's put Bill Marler out of business. And I'm thinking to myself, it's like, you've created like a meme before people even talked about memes. And that's the same kind of thing that I've sort of, hey, if you hate us, then take away our money, take away what you think we really live for. And really that's become, a great way of getting companies to do the right thing, but not necessarily for the moral reason of not poisoning their customers. They do it for like an anger reason because they hate lawyers. And I look at them, I say, I really don't give an SHIT about why you do it, whether you do it for business reasons or moral reasons. Just do it, just do it. So I'm probably giving you a way more complex and nuanced response than what you were expecting. But, I think that's why there's absolutely reasons for trial lawyers to do what we do on all these products. But I became, because I was frustrated that I wasn't making enough change fast enough, I kind of morphed into spending 100% of my time being a trial lawyer and another 100% of my time being a food safety advocate. So That's kind of how I wound up kind of in the space that I am.
Well, I mean, you say that, but I do think that at a certain point in time, once you've done so much in the industry, which, to be honest with you, it's a niche industry, right? You're not doing car wrecks, you're not doing 18-wheelers. I'm sure if you were to look up, and you're based in Seattle, right? So if you were to look up at Seattle area, how many trucking attorneys there were, or car accident attorneys were, it'd be hundreds. But how many food safety lawyers are there in the nation?
There's our firm, and then anybody else who has a website that says they're a food safety lawyer either worked for me at one point as a summer associate, was asked by someone, a good friend of mine, to help them on a case, and then they decided if Marler, who's a dumb guy, he can do it, I should be able to do it. So they put up a website, or lawyers who used to refer cases to me and were like, "Why are we referring cases to Marler? I'm going to do it myself," and they do it. But it's like, I'll give you an example. I'm doing the Daily Harvest case right now. It's a they had a product in there called Terra that put 400 people into acute liver failure. I represent 340 people in that outbreak of 400. And there's one lawyer here, one lawyer there. There's 50 other lawyers who have the rest of the cases. And so that's kind of how it works in this space. But again, it kind of gets back to my point of, since most foodborne illnesses are never figured out, it's really hard. It's not easy to go link a listeria case to something you ate 3 months ago. You know, it's tough.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I love my job. I mean, I have the best. I'm one of those kind of trial lawyers, and I'm sure you're like this too, where when somebody asks me what I do, that's, you know, at a party or whatever, I have absolutely no hesitation to say, I represent, you know, little children who are poisoned by giant food companies, you know, and it's, I feel good about what I do. So
let's talk a little bit about, let's take you back to 1992, 1993. The reason, and you know, when we were emailing back and forth, the real reason I want to get you on is I want to talk to you about I think you're like, what, 4 years out of law school, and you're given, I think, one of the deaths, and then you've got, what was her name, Brianna?
Brianne. Yeah.
Brianne.
A little more complex.
Who went through, we'll go through what she went through.
There's a book you should read. It's called Poisoned, and you can get it on Amazon. It was actually a writer, Jeff Benedict, wrote the book Poisoned about the Jack in the Box case. And so it has a little bit more of the backstory about, you know, who I was as a young lawyer. It's actually, you know, required reading in a lot of law school ethics courses. And it's kind of like a cult classic book for the kind of a food safety people. A lot of time, I do a lot of speeches around the world on food safety. And it's really invariably some, you know, and not some, dozens sometimes of 35 to 45-year-old food safety women with dog-eared poison books will come up and ask me to sign it. So it's a little awkward, but yeah, no, I was 4 years out of law school. I was working in a medium-sized insurance defense firm doing my billable hours, but I also had been picking up, you know, plaintiffs' cases, whether it's car accidents, slip and falls, whatever. Yeah. And I happened to somebody who knew the Kiners contacted me, and that was kind of the end of the story. I wound up representing over 100 people in that outbreak, and sort of pushed myself to the front of the, you know, I offered to be the document repository. I offered to do all the depositions. And as you know far too well, you know, if you offer to do stuff, most people will just sit back. And the thing is they sat back and never learned all that I learned. And so by the time the Jack in the Box case was over, I knew more about foodborne illness litigation than any lawyer in the world. And then the other guy who knew the most was the guy who was the defense counsel for Jack in the Box. And I hired him away. And that was Marler Clark. Clark was defense counsel for Jack in the Box.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I hired him, and we started Marler Clark, you know, in 1998, and haven't looked back. He just actually retired 6 months ago, which begs the question, like, why am I doing this? But anyway.
You just can't get enough of it, probably. That's what it is.
Yeah, I love my job, and I can't get enough of this. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
You know, I think for your specific niche, you know, every single plaintiff attorney in the nation always deals with causation, and the dealing with that is pain. If it's a car wreck, if it's trucking, you know, you're dealing with a pre-existing condition, degenerative disease, all that. But yours is pretty extreme. I mean, Jack in the Box, I think wasn't too bad because it was a very good direct link that people were worried about it. But, you know, on your other cases, it's very tough to prove that causation. How do you deal with that?
It's I think I probably am the only law firm in the world that has an medical epidemiologist on staff. So we actually run our office. I kind of liken it to a health department with a prosecuting attorney appended to it. And so we have medical people look at all the medical records. We do, all the FOIA requests to, government agencies to see if we can figure it out. But a lot of times the government entities that are doing these investigations are so pressured to come out and either say that there is an outbreak or not an outbreak or close the investigation. A lot of times we pick that up and then we actually do the investigation, the trace back, down to the farm level, using Google, maps and aerial photos and all kinds of stuff to, pinpoint where the likely source of the contamination was. So it can be incredibly difficult. But some of the technology now is getting really, really incredibly good. We have what's called whole genome sequencing, where like in this recent case of listeria in the state of Washington, the state made an announcement probably 30 days before they ever linked it to a particular food item. And they said that there was this cluster of 6 cases, 3 that died, that were linked to each other. So, and what the whole genome sequence does is they've extracted the listeria bacteria out of the spinal fluid of all 6 of these people. And they've looked at the entire genome of that listeria bacteria, and they say it's identical. It's the same bug. So it's really no different than, somebody murdering 6 people and leaving DNA, and then they know that person was at those locations each time. And so the technology is incredible. So we knew all of these people were linked, but didn't know why. And we got hired by 2 people, and we're kind of investigating it. And about simultaneously that we started going, hey, there's a common denominator of this one restaurant where 2 people ate at. The state came and said, the common denominator is this restaurant where these people ate at. And then they went in and did testing on the milkshake machines, and they found the same listeria whole genome sequenced bacteria in the machine. So causation here is like a lock, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. And so, I talked defense counsel, I talked to them. We filed a first lawsuit 2 days ago. Defense counsel called me last night and said, we give up. So
that's always a good feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see what kind of insurance they have. So,
but it sounds like to me, it sounds like the federal government or any government entity, I'm assuming it's actually state and local government, is following you as opposed to, a lot of times personal injury theories follow the state government. They're like, well, we'll wait for the report to show X, Y, and Z. You're the one heading it up.
Sometimes I'd say that's 50% true. So it's funny. This has probably been 2006. I get we get calls all the time from, potential victims. And I get this call from a woman in Wisconsin who is an ER nurse, and both of her kids are hospitalized with E. coli 0157, which is the same strain that happened in the Jack in the Box case. Right. And she was convinced that it was Dole baby spinach that made her kids sick. And the state was saying, no, it's because you guys live near a pond, and that's what caused it. And she's frustrated. And so, but she has no leftover product. But she says, that's the only thing my kids ate that was different than the rest of the family. And I'm like, okay, we'll investigate. So we send material to her, and we're waiting for it to come back. A couple days later, I get a call from a woman in Utah, and 2 of her kids are sick. with E. coli 0157. I asked her, did you have Dole baby spinach? She goes, I can't remember, but the health department says we're part of a nationwide outbreak. I was like, something's going on. It was Labor Day weekend, like almost like right now in 2006. And I was taking my kids to the Oregon coast to teach them how to surf. And so I got down on the Oregon coast and I'm teaching my kids how to surf, and I had a BlackBerry and a phone at the time. And, people from the office are calling, hey, there's another person who's sick with E. coli in Oregon. So I called this gal and I said, hey, she goes, I just got out of the hospital. I tested positive for E. coli. I said, hey, you wouldn't happen to have eaten Dole baby spinach, would you? And she goes, well, yeah, it's in my refrigerator. So then I called the State Department of Health in Oregon, and I knew the epidemiologist really well. And I said, hey, Bill, I think I got the smoking gun. And he drove to that woman's house, picked up the spinach, took it to the lab. It tested positive for E. coli 0157. And the outbreak just blew up. And there were 205 people sick, 5 dead across 30 states. And so for a long time, public health would come and they were doing research to see whether or not we, Marler Clark, could be an early warning system for foodborne illness cases. So it does happen. And a lot of times, we know about stuff sometimes before public health does. So
now, being a food safety attorney, doing all this stuff I don't think it's commonplace, but I would be very worried if Bill Marler came at my door, as any producer. But one thing I had a question about, when you're doing this in 1993 and 1992 and 1993, I mean, what was were you scared? Were you a little nervous about what you were about to do? I mean, to take this on?
I was probably too young and stupid to be scared. There's a value in that. You know what I mean? But I had a kind of a sort of a unique upbringing. I had run away from home when I was a kid, became a migrant farm worker, then finally made it through high school. Then I went on to college. And when I was a freshman, I decided to run for political office in the city. I was just had turned 19. And I became the youngest person ever elected to any office in the United States, because this was 1976. And we had just gotten 18-year-olds had just gotten the right to vote, and you couldn't get elected. So for about a year, I was the youngest person in the United States elected to any office. Now, it's much more common to have young people. But so I served 4 years while I was an undergrad as a city council member. So my kind of perspective on comfort and confidence about dealing with stuff and dealing with people and dealing with the media, by the time I was doing the Jack in the Box case, by the time I was out of law school, like holding press conferences and talking to the media and feeling a sense of like, I can figure this out. It doesn't mean that I wasn't nervous or scared when I didn't even know how to say E. coli. But I knew well enough that I needed to go out to the University of Washington Medical School library, walk in and go, okay, we didn't have computers back then. Google didn't exist.
Yeah.
So we, the Dewey Decimal System and stuff, but so, I mean, we're talking seriously old school. And so
does that also mean like you use federal reporters too? You actually had to dust off the book and
Oh my God, don't even go there. So, yeah, I mean, I think the first time I ever used kind of like a spreadsheet document sort of process system was during the Jack in the Box case. I mean, it was like the first time that we were able to sort of kind of organize things but it was really super primitive, really primitive. Not like things are now where, like, I've got a case now where I've got, I don't know, 700,000 pages of documents, and they're all PDFs, and they've gotten, scanned in, and now they're, readable. And, I look for keywords, and it's just like snap, snap. And it's like, being a lawyer now is easy. It's like, back in the olden days. So,
there was no scan OCR back in the day, huh?
No. So, but yeah, no, it was, I think what's still, there were a lot of really, really, really good plaintiffs' trial lawyers in Seattle, and some of them have now passed, but many of them, are still alive, and they were my, they were the guys that when you heard that they were trying a case, you'd go down to the courthouse and watch them, and they were kind enough to let this little young guy push ahead, and, then they all became friends of mine, and, I never, I don't look at them as equals. They're still way better lawyers than I've ever could hope to be. But, it was kind that they let me do my thing, and it helped their clients, it helped them. And, but even today I've gotten, emails and calls from trial lawyers that I have incredible respect for, who've watched the movie, and they're like, God, Marler, you put on 25 pounds, ha ha ha, that kind of stuff. But it's all good. And I think, a lot of the people I worked with 30 years ago are really proud of what I've accomplished.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about, so at one point, Jack in the Box sues their meat supplier.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they actually ended up in a settlement later on. But
they did.
Were you worried about that going in? Were you saying, do I have the wrong guy here? What am I doing? Or should I just press on and do what I need to do?
So because Jack in the Box was a manufacturer of the hamburger, that was my theory, that a hamburger was no different than a car. And that was the first time we really used that idea in a food context. And the court agreed with me. And, that was, there were issues on a summary judgment and, all throughout the case it's not a product. The meat's the product. I'm like, no, that's a component part of the product, just like a faulty regulator is in an automobile, So, and you're the manufacturer, so you're strictly liable. And they're like, no, it's the meat. And I sort of just focused on, we wound up doing discovery on the meat suppliers, the meat manufacturer, and they participated in the settlement. Frankly, if they hadn't, Jack in the Box would have gone bankrupt. But my focus was on Jack in the Box and their failure to abide by Washington State cooking standards, which were 155-degree internal temperature, where everywhere else in the United States was 140. And we uncovered documents during the course of discovery that showed that they knew about the regulations and they chose to ignore it, and in fact told everybody the 2-minute cook time is appropriate, because if you cook it longer, it's not going to be good. And, I always say, to people, how long do you think it took Jack in the Box after the outbreak to go from 2 minutes to 2 minutes and 15 seconds? And that was the solution to the problem, 15 seconds. And if you think about it, if they had done that, the likelihood of there being an outbreak, or certainly would have been, a 20th of the size. Yeah. So pretty sad. 4 kids dead, 75 with acute kidney failure. It's ridiculous. So, but it happens. It's unfortunately, it continues to happen. So, not in meat quite so much at all, but in chicken it does. But we got work to do. I've got work to do. So,
yeah, and that I think that also helped you transcend not only that case, but the other cases you worked on. And you brought up the fact that you're doing 100% as an advocate and 100% as a trial attorney, and you're like, I need to switch over. But I actually think you are essentially transcending into your position, right? So at a certain point in time, as a trial attorney, if you're doing something that is affecting the public significantly, people like those in Congress and are going to ask for your help. I mean, you just said it yourself. 50% of the time, you're the one figuring out where it's coming from. That's it. I mean, look, you say it in a humble way, but it's insane, right? I mean, that's crazy that you're ahead of everyone else on that. So I don't think it's I'm working on this. I think your career is just transcending to that, essentially. So,
well, a couple of times where I got like a look to actually, go into government and sort of run some of these agencies. During the Obama administration, I was on the short list for Undersecretary of Agriculture for Food Safety. And, I met with Secretary Vilsack, who's now back again in the Biden administration as Secretary of Agriculture. And I'd known Tom for a long, long time, and when he was governor in Iowa. And so he met with me. I'd gone through the whole FBI thing, and he just looked at me and he goes, if I appointed you, it'd be the right thing to do, but the industries would just go batshit crazy. And we just can't do it. We can't do it. We'll pay attention to you, and they actually wound up picking somebody who was great, Elizabeth Hagan, and she and I worked collaboratively on projects during her tenure there in the Obama administration, and she did some really good stuff. And so, every once in a while I've kind of wanted to dip my toe back into politics kind of thing, but I'm pretty effective out doing what I do. So
apparently,
I mean, we've made change, not as fast as I would have liked, and there's a lot more to do. But we're getting down to kind of like, just even from the movie, we're down to a handful of things that if the public and government and industry could kind of come together, we could deal with the chicken problem, which is 1.4 million Americans are getting sick from salmonella every year. 60% of that is because of chicken. The leafy green problem, there's an outbreak of E. coli at the University of Arkansas right now. I got a call this morning because I teach a class there at the law school, and I get a call and they sent me the press release from the school. Looks like there's a bunch of young women sick, so it's likely leafy greens again. I mean, right. That's what college girls eat, is lots of leafy greens. And so, it's another thing that underscores the fact that, we have environmental, issues we need to deal with. So, there's a lot more to do.
No, definitely. Yeah. I don't think you still have ambulances to chase, as you say.
Yes, I do.
And I mean nothing against that as a personal injury attorney as well.
Yeah. It's fair enough. Fair enough.
What, you've told me what you're doing next. The one thing I do ask every guest, putting yourself back in 92, what's some advice you would give a young attorney?
Man, that's a good idea. I mean, so I think a lot of times, and I've got young lawyers working for me, and I don't mean to sound like an old dude, but I am. But I think one of the things that, and I don't think it matters much if you're a millennial or you're not a millennial or you're a baby boomer like me, or at least the tail end of the baby boomers. I think people need to try to find their passion. They need to find something that makes what you're doing, your career, more than a job. It becomes an avocation, not a vocation. And that I think, I forget, give me an example. I think most people who know me, most people who, at least know me basically, think I'm like a workaholic. But I don't feel like I'm a workaholic. And my family doesn't feel like I'm a workaholic because I've integrated like my kids and my wife into everything I do. And they've been cool about it. I've taken, when I speak in China, I took my 7-year-old with me and we spent 2 weeks traveling in China together. I took my whole family on a 7-week, speeching across Australia and New Zealand. We've done stuff like that. None of them want to become a lawyer, but that's a whole other issue. But so I think trying to integrate that, trying to integrate your life with your job, so you don't have that I see a lot. It's like, oh, it's 5 o'clock Friday, I'm done,
Right.
and that just doesn't satisfy me. It doesn't mean that I'm going to work all day Saturday, but I'm going to be aware about like what's going on in my space all the time. I mean, it's not it's not by happenstance that we figure these cases out 50% of the time. It's not happenstance that I know about an outbreak of E. coli at University of Arkansas before it even hits the news. So it's because I've integrated myself, and part of who I am is such involved in it, and that's why it doesn't feel like a job to me. And that's the long answer to your simple question. I think people need to find their passion, and then I think what they do in their lives, because being a lawyer, I think, is the highest calling that you can have. I mean, but for lawyers and the rule of law, and we're seeing that right now play out in real time, and, regardless of your political persuasion, we're seeing this play out real time, about what lawyers and the rule of law and courts do to protect all of us and our ability to continue to have a democracy. And I think that's, why I love the law and I love lawyers, even defense lawyers. They have their role, they have their
Right.
role. And so, yeah, I think that if there's the one long-winded answer, it's like, find your passion, find the thing that makes you want to go to work and makes it so you want to come home and tell your significant other what the hell you did all day. So.
Yeah. I've seen that those that become successful in this and become as a lawyer, they're just absolutely obsessed with the product, whatever it is, whether you're obsessed with contracts, I guess.
Yeah.
But the trial product, some of the best trial attorneys, they're so obsessed with having that so perfect.
Yeah.
And that's what they want to do, and they do very well.
Yeah.
So I 100% agree with you. Find the passion.
Yeah.
Bill, I appreciate you coming on. I really do. Again, anyone who, if someone wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do that if they want to talk to you about a food case that they want you to work on?
Marler Clark's easy to find. I talk to lawyers from all over the world all the time about cases, and give them advice as to like what to do. And sometimes they refer the cases to me and I take care of it. Sometimes they just want to know what the hell to do so they can take care of it. And that's all good. It's all good. It's all about taking care of the people. And so, so I'm easy to find, Bill Marler, marlerclark.com. So.
Perfect. And again, for those viewers, Poison, The Dirty Truth About Your Food, fantastic documentary. Just don't watch it right before you go grocery shopping, as I made that mistake. Definitely, it's really great having you on. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm coming to speaking at the Texas Trial Lawyers in San Antonio, I think in September. So
really?
I think
okay.
Yeah. So if you're in the hood, I know it's a little ways away from Houston, but if you're in the hood, come on by.
Not bad.
So
I'm down, definitely coming by. I was on the lead academy for the Texas Trial Lawyers Association.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about actually running up in some leadership roles. So I'm going to come by. Say
hi.
hi.
Come by and say hi, and we'll have we'll have a libation together.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. You take care. Have a nice day and weekend.
You too.